A fourth North Carolina State University student died of an apparent suicide this semester.
He died right after failing a math test.
It's just somebody you would never guess.
The 22-year-old senior was found in a campus residence.
Leading cause of death for young adults.
He hid the depth of his pain and chose a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Whether it's anger, sadness, you're feeling down, you're feeling blue, it's natural. I just want to make talking about mental health normal.
A lot of my performance dictated my mental health and just like my mental well-being.
When your identity is wrapped in that sport or that thing that you do, it's really hard to separate.
Depression can affect anybody. It does not discriminate.
The biggest challenge with this problem is that it scares people. It's an uncomfortable topic. Mental health challenges can affect anyone, even those we least suspect. There is hope once we understand that there's no shame in asking for help. How comfortable were you growing up on football teams talking about your emotions?
You have your close friends on the team that you talk to, and you have that tight-knit relationship to where you actually can have someone to talk to, whether it's your roommate, whether it's just a friend that you built this bond with. I've been blessed enough to be on teams there where we even still talk today about family members or sitting down in their locker when they have a tough moment and just giving them a hug and things like that and saying we're here for you and being there for each other is important.
At your foundation, you try to get everybody to think kindness. Where did that come from?
One, I'd say it's a way that I live. You want to be kind and nice to everyone because you never know who you'll impact. You never know how you'll impact someone, whether it's a conversation or you're walking by someone or you're talking to someone, or whether it's towards bullying or mental health. If you are kind and think kind, it impacts those two things tremendously. And it's one of our mantras at Caleb Cares. So
988 is the suicide lifeline. That's what you can dial now instead of needing to know the whole number. You painted 988 on your nails.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
So I actually did that 2 years ago now. I thought it was a cool idea to be able to, one, be a male, paint your nails, two, be in the position of quarterback and play football, such a male-dominant sport, and then also be able to paint my nails and put 988 on it and support and be there for others on a national level. I just want to make talking about mental health normal.
Research shows that medication is only effective 50% of the time for depression, yet human connection is 90% effective.
Yep.
So, as you use your voice, something that I hear a lot is, why should I care? It's never affected me. What would you say to that person that doesn't understand why they need to learn about this or why they should reach out to somebody else?
It's important for them to learn because you can always help someone, even if you've never been through it, even if you don't go through it, if you haven't been through it yet in your life. You never know who you can help and how many you can help.
You're under a lot of pressure, and I know you're prepared and that's how you handle your pressure, but you're still gonna have your disappointments.
Yeah.
What are your in-the-moment coping mechanisms that you do when something happens, but you have to get your head back in the game?
It doesn't even have to be about sports or anything. It's the people that I'm around, knowing that people care, knowing that people are dependent on me. We set goals in our mind at the beginning of the season or during the season that we want to go reach. I don't want to let any of them down. I don't want them to, feel down or feel disappointed. And so when I mess up, I throw a pick or interception or something like that, or I fumble. I go to the sideline. I start to encourage because, like I said, I don't want to let them down or bring any doubt or anything like that, and put that in their mind. Losing for sure bothers me a lot. It affects me a lot, and so. Especially in the moment. When I get to the locker room, I also understand that I have, like I said, other people depending on me or other people looking at me, and so I have to deal with my emotions, not push them off to the side or anything like that, but deal with them.
You said something really powerful, that you deal with your emotions, you don't push them away.
Yeah.
And it can be, male culture. Oh, you don't feel that, just go away from it. So do you have anything to say about what it's like to feel your emotions and kind of deal with them?
I mean, when things come up and you have a certain emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, you're crying and not crying, you're feeling down, you're feeling blue, whatever the case may be, it's natural. Everyone deals with things differently. Even if they do feel the same on the inside, maybe on the outside it looks a little different. I mean, there's been times where on different teams where I've lost and I'm sitting on the plane, or we're sitting on the bus, or walking out of the stadium. I mean, you hear laughter, so maybe their laughing is a mask for how they feel inside. And for me, I won't be laughing. I'll walk out of there, I'll have my headphones on. I don't really want to, speak to people after because I'm trying to replay all of the things that went wrong, all of the things that I maybe could have done better. And that person that might walk out laughing, may feel the same as I do inside, but and the next teammate may walk out and he doesn't really feel anything because maybe he didn't feel like he contributed. Everybody deals with things differently and reacts to things differently, and I should, and everyone should, understand that and be better at it.
My first words were "Mom, Dad, a touchdown," which is, I think it's just kind of funny because it just shows like there had to have been so much sports going on for touchdown to be my very first word. I was always playing pretty much everything in every season I could until high school, and then I started focusing more on football and lacrosse when I got to that point.
I found basketball, and I think basketball really saved my life because there was a lot of family drama. My parents were both gang members once in their lifetime. They had put that life away. They were also drug addicts at one point in their life. But when they had me, they kind of changed their life around, and I never really experienced that side of them until I was about 11 years old. And, things started to go downhill. I noticed my family dynamic just shift in the blink of an eye.
Athletics was the main focus of what I was about. It landed me into places I'd never been or experienced before. It's tough from a young age. You're expected to be at a certain level, and I was lucky to have some support throughout, but I had my own challenges.
Starting from such a young age and having those pressures, what age would you say your own challenges began?
I think it was really my senior year in high school. I had made the top team, and one of my first games was actually injured my shoulder. I went to a school that has the highest level of players in the NHL, and that became the expectation. That's all I wanted, and that was my identity.
Can you take me back to that day and tell me how that felt and that initial impact, knowing the repercussions that could come from this injury?
I remember it was a game, one of my first games, and just got hit on the side. I felt something was wrong, kind of excruciating pain. I had never experienced anything like that, and that was really more about the questions after when that injury came. How would I come back from that? How could I keep achieving if this injury was holding me back?
I don't know if you experienced this, but many people will experience ruminating thoughts of just thinking and not being able to get out these intrusive thoughts about their future, night after night. Is that something that you struggled with as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when your identity is wrapped in, that sport or that thing that you do, it's really hard to separate, and it's hard to not think about others or compare yourself or, try and move yourself through that without just overthinking it. When you're injured, then that happens even more. So it was definitely, the first experience of a huge setback where I was sort of frozen in time, you could say. Knowing that my journey ahead was still to try and achieve and become a Division I athlete. And I ended up doing that and attended a school where there weren't many plans for me as a player, And I quickly realized I wasn't in a good situation. On top of the injury coming off of that, now going to a new environment with new teammates that were awesome, but not being able to achieve was really what sent me down a path that really wasn't healthy, and ended up transferring because of it. It was really a dark time for me, if I'm being honest, because I had achieved that Division I status, and that was really what mattered to me. And now things are a little different. You can transfer to any other school, but at the time you couldn't do that. So I had to sit out a year if I wanted to continue to play, or move on to a Division III school, which is where I found Hobart. That's really where things started me on a better path. I went on to be the captain of the team and really thrived in that environment. And I was on sort of the other side of that moment in my life.
It kind of started when my dad lost his job. So I went outside one day and I found a brown paper bag. And as a kid, I've always been smart. And my intuition was always there. I finally looked inside and it was a crack pipe. It took me about 2 months to realize that if I stayed, it was gonna be me wrapped up in the situation, me wrapped up in the drugs. And I would go to this place called the Joan Kroc Center all day, every day, starting at like 6 o'clock in the morning, all the way until they closed, just because I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to deal with anything that was going on. The eviction notice was there. We had nothing in the house. I was sleeping on the ground, no food, no water. And thankfully, I really appreciate my basketball coach at the time. One day he saw me walking home from a basketball tournament. It was almost near 12 o'clock in the morning, and he found me. He stopped me. His son was in the car. He took me under his wing. He's the dad I call dad now. And if it wasn't for him that day, who knows, where my life would have taken me, because I was definitely headed down the wrong road. It wasn't as easy to say I just moved in with him and everything was, sunshine and flowers, but it was definitely a lot better than what my situation was. I found a way and, got a college opportunity to play basketball. I was excited to just get out of the environment that I was in. But I was also nervous because I knew that I didn't have a home once I moved. I actually was supposed to go to University of Southern California out of high school. Coach got fired and I had built a relationship with her. She knew everything that was going on in my life. Anyone who knows the college process, it's a blessing, don't get me wrong, but it's also stressful. Trying to figure out which schools are telling you the truth, which schools are just giving you fluff, and trying to find the best fit for you. Luckily for me, I had a lot of options, so it was definitely overwhelming. But I essentially just chose Texas, University of Texas at Austin. Dealt with a whole bunch of stuff there. I gained so much weight. I was at my highest ever. And the head coach knew a little bit about my story. And she just constantly pushed going to see a psychologist. And knowing the person that I was at that time, I saw that as a weakness. I saw that as, you could figure it out on your own. Why do you need someone else's help? And if you do go see a psychologist, they're gonna look at you crazy. I transferred to South Carolina and I just knew this was the fresh start that I needed. I was playing, honestly, the best basketball my entire life. First, the NCAA denied my waiver, so I was gonna have to sit out that year. Then secondly, I broke my feet. I had stress fractures in my navicular bones that required surgery. And that was a really, really tough time. I think a turning point in my life and an eye-opener, because the aftermath of having surgery was a moment that I couldn't get myself out from. And that point was the big, scary D word of depression. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. And when I had got to South Carolina, I started talking to a psychologist. He told me that I was dealing with depression. I always looked at depression like a weakness, and that was just never a part of me. I never wanted to be seen as weak. I never wanted to be seen as vulnerable, as anything less than strong. Once I went and accepted the fact that I had depression, I was able to get better. Because if I would have stayed in the denial stage, who knows how long it would have lasted. Depression can affect anybody. it does not discriminate. For me, is acknowledging the space that I'm in. I do lean a lot more on, my closest friends, and I do tell my dad some things now, even though, he's not really the emotional guy, but I do tell him sometimes when I'm struggling and, just a lot is going on in my life. And I think having those people there that you can, rest your head on for a little bit has definitely helped me.
I started noticing that a lot of my performance dictated my mental health and just like my mental well-being, to the point where like I couldn't really differentiate between like who I was outside of sports versus who I was inside of sports. So I got double shoulder surgery in high school, and that was probably where I first started noticing mental health being like a really important part of my life, or something that was just taking a toll on me. My highs were very high and my lows were very low, and I didn't think it was an issue because I was feeling good a lot of the time, but it was just so volatile that I didn't realize how vulnerable I was. Like every little thing could either like build me up or break me. I was attributing a lot of my self-worth to who I was on the field, and I didn't have a whole lot outside that I was thinking about, that I was passionate about, and it just kind of led to me being all over the place with my emotions. I would be like crying a ton. I would be very emotional. I would shut myself off from other people. I think I did a really, really poor job of expressing myself, closing myself off for sure, being very emotional, not letting other people see what I was going through. No one's gonna really actively seek out helping you if you're not giving them an opportunity to, if you're not giving them any signs that you might need something.
So then you go off to college.
Yeah.
And you move to Virginia. Mm-hmm. How was that?
That move was very difficult for me. It was something that was definitely a culture shock to me. I left my bubble for really the first time. The people were different, the area was different. I missed home a lot. I was very, very homesick first moving out. Towards the end of high school and the start of college, when there was a lot more social activities, like whether it's parties or something like that, I would just find myself not going and just taking myself out of the equation in a lot of those, just because it was something that I knew I had to like find another level of myself to actually muster up the strength to go to it. The things that you'd expect to be like an elevated heart rate, like I would be very, very nervous, like be a lot of different feelings going on inside of me, a lot of butterflies, like a lot of sweating, stuff like that, where I just like it felt like my body was preparing myself for like a battle, was like how it felt like I was going into it.
So avoidance was your
pretty much
tactic.
So I tore both my labrums and both my hips, and I was in a lot of pain, and I kept getting different like diagnoses. So I had an injury, but I couldn't figure out what it was and how to actually fix it. Nothing was clicking at this time. Like everything that I thought I had going momentum-wise freshman year just came crashing down sophomore year. I must have just seemed like a different person, because I remember going up one day to my coach's office. He called me up and he was like, what's going on with you? We want you to be like a different player out there. We know kind of something's going on. He gave me like the old like Ted Lasso advice of like be a goldfish, like don't overthink like what's going on, like forget about what just happened a couple seconds ago, like move on to the next kind of thing. Because my issue is that I was so in my own head that like I was living in the past, or I was thinking like too much about the future. I was just being so far from the present. Even though I was talking to people, I probably wasn't being very true. I was probably downplaying a lot of what I was feeling. You asked the question earlier of like, did I talk a lot about mental health growing up? Like no, and this is probably the first time I really did, was when I was starting to understand like that I wasn't in a good spot. I felt like I was burdening people that probably I wasn't burdening at all. They would have loved for me to be honest with them. During the lockdowns, I got double hip surgery, and that was nice to actually get a correct diagnosis, because I was going a little bit crazy during the season, being like, why am I in so much pain if nobody can actually tell me what's wrong with me? I was confined to a wheelchair for a couple months. I had to like reteach myself how to walk. Not playing sports was the worst thing that could happen to me at the time.
If I remember correctly, there was times that you even had thoughts of suicide.
It was definitely something I thought about a lot more than I would like to admit. I think the idea scared me out of it. The normal thought process is you're gonna be alleviating yourself of a lot of pain. And I think I'm lucky enough to have the perspective in that situation where you're not alleviating yourself, you're just passing it along to a lot more people. Like you have your team in sports, but you have a bunch of other teams just in life that you're a part of. And like your family's a team, your group of friends is a team. In that situation, if you are, in a very vulnerable state and thinking about suicide, or if you're thinking about harming yourself, like you're hurting your teams a lot more than you're hurting just yourself. I'm really thankful for like the people that are in my life and stuff, and I wouldn't want to hurt them in any way. And I think that was a big reason for me not going down the path a little bit worse.
Unfortunately, a lot of people that attempt suicide or die by suicide, they actually believe there's such a burden that their friends and family would be better off without them,
Yeah.
and that once they finish the grieving process, that their lives would be better.
Yeah.
One of my best friends who had experienced similar challenges, he got to a place of being on the brink of suicide.
What did you notice in your friend?
I noticed our conversations were incredibly brief. The moments, the banter back and forth that you normally have just wasn't there. And every time I would try and extend, just check in, it would just always be the same. So I just sort of noticed and picked up a different tone. And also just realizing from my situation, there was some instinct that told me, wow, those things might be pretty significant. I was busy, I was thriving and enjoying what I was doing, but I had been through something similar. So I reached out to the suicide hotline and I called on his behalf. And I remember asking that person on the phone, hey, my friend said he doesn't want to live anymore, what do I do? And they gave me this vague information. What was I supposed to do with that in the moment? And I ended up just ditching that information and going right to my friend's dad, who was able to get to him in time. I just had a thought that his dad would understand.
Are there signs that surprised you that were actually signs of suicide that you were unaware of?
It goes back to that personal experience, and what he expressed and went through was these major life events. They're significant to that individual, and we cannot discount that or that trauma as being something that could push someone to that place. Everyone in life goes through those moments, whether it's a death in the family, and I just lost my grandpa, and knowing those moments. But it's not to say I'm having thoughts of suicide. It's more about supporting that individual so that they don't get there. So really discovering where someone's at, and if you're having that curious conversation, can go a long way, especially if you're a parent or supporting friend. That person better than most people, so you have that chance to discover someone's intentions.
At that point in time, is that when you decided to start the TAD project?
Yes, that was a crucial point, and that happened my senior year. And I remember just endlessly researching. I didn't want this to happen to anyone else. We launched the TAD project specifically around educating people about crisis moments. What does it mean for you? What does it mean to help somebody else? Keep people close to you and realize that connection is everything. We live in a fast-paced world. We have things going on in our life, but making that effort for the connection is really all that matters. Make that connection, make that effort, and you'll have best friends and new friends and strangers that you can help along the way.
I hear concern about how soon you ask about suicide. We have to remember that the people we least suspect can have mental health challenges. So I tend to err on this side of caution and bring it into conversation early on when I'm noticing behavior changes plus major life events. And that's when I ask directly, are you thinking about suicide? And if you're nervous about that, you can say, hey, I see these behavior changes, I see these life events. Sometimes people think about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? So then there's a gentle lead into what you're saying. It is estimated that 20 million Americans have thoughts of suicide each year. Clearly not everybody acts on it, but touch on the importance of normalizing these conversations, why it's important to you.
One thing that I've been trying to do as my family, my team, and myself is be able to be a voice for the people that don't feel like they have a voice, and say it's okay, and normalizing it within the world today, and the way it stands is one of the most important things, because it's, like you said, 20 million people is a lot of people. So we normalize this, and you don't know the impact that it could have on that large number.
It's my opinion that you have a lot of empathy. Tell me why you care so much about others.
I said the two main reasons is because, or three main reasons. My mom, she cares for everybody. She owned a daycare. That's her having to care for some other, adult's child and take care of them throughout the day and almost every day of the week. I was always around the daycare, so that fed into it. My dad, he always helps out. He always helps just about anyone out. When I was younger, I'd always ask both of them, or I'd be questioning, why are you always helping someone out or anything like that? And I was a selfish young adolescent child, and then I got older and I went to high school, and even my high school, Gonzaga, it was our motto, our mantra is men for others. It was all boys school, so that was our thing. It was always the men of Gonzaga and this brotherhood of Gonzaga being for other people, whether it was your brothers at Gonzaga, outside of school. And so I've had a lot of moments in my life and people, like I said, my institution that I went to, that have helped me be the man I am today, and want to help and reach out to anyone that I can.
I'm really grateful that you had the willingness to talk about this, because people are uncomfortable, and it's a topic that means the world to me personally and to our partnership.
Of course. No, thank you for having me. This was awesome. Also gave me some more insight for myself and for my team. Thank you.
Given everything that you know today, having your nonprofit, really understanding suicide, if you knew that the day your friend texted you, what would you have done differently?
I would have been more comfortable asking those questions, what he was actually going through in that moment. I was afraid to ask, are you having thoughts of suicide? Do you have, the means to do that? Where are you? I was afraid. At the end of the day, I would say, do everything we can to check in with that individual. Have that pact with someone. Like, when I get to that place, I'll let you know. And I think, if anything, I've learned that as the most important thing.
In these ages, mental health is becoming, a lot more social. It's being accepted. It's not being looked at as weak. Looking back, if I would have just acknowledged simple sadness or simple, feelings of abandonment, then I would have probably been in a better space quicker than, how long it actually took me. And I realize a little bit more about myself every time I do tell my story. I realize, how strong I am, even, having gone through so much. I'm definitely excited about what's to come. And, although basketball is, the forefront of my life right now, I definitely see myself venturing off and, doing something other than basketball.
Probably the biggest thing for me actually was starting to open up and talk to the people that were around me. I have a lot of people that listen to me, and I'm really thankful for that. So realizing that was probably the hardest thing, and our head defensive coach was really good about helping me do this. It was focus on one thing today and just make that your thing and get better at this one thing today. And I think that helped me zero in on something that I could actually focus on as a goal. Changing the language that you talk to yourself was something that I hadn't even thought about before. Ended up making a huge difference for me. And I'll give you an example of something that we focused on at Richmond was a get to, not got to mentality. I'd always dreamed about playing college lacrosse and then college football at USC, obviously. Were two of just goals that I had that I am so lucky to actually be able to be doing. And it's crazy for me to think that I achieved those goals and then had the mindset of I had to do this as an obligation. And being able to have that little flip in my self-talk vocabulary was something that made me realize that I'm actually in a position that I had been trying to get to that point my entire life. Now that I'm actually here, that negative thought process is only harming me.
Hopefully people see themselves in these stories, whether they say something that John said or Caleb or Ben or Destiny, that they see themselves and they reach out for help and they know that they're not alone in their struggles. Other people feel just the same way they do.
I agree, and the world's so digital and human connection is so important and we all long for it, and it's amazing what we can do for our friends, even if you don't seek therapy or even if you don't have resources to get certain help.
Talking about mental health is so important Because I think you'd agree with me, the climate kids are growing up in today is so different than what we grew up in.
The issues that are being faced today are so different. The pandemic, climate change, the political climate that we've been dealing with for years, social media, of course, even a sense of feeling isolated, not included. So even if you're not being bullied, when you can see on social media that you were the only one not at the party and you're at home alone, even what that causes can cause a lot of despair, and all at an age when people are trying to figure out who they are anyway and where they fit in this world.
Exactly, when they feel rejected by their peers and that's all they know and they don't know what to do. So that's why it's so important for people to just reach out and connect, as you said.
I can't stress the importance of checking in. And depending on your age, don't ever promise to keep it a secret, because you may need to talk to a coach. You may need to tell a parent, but you can also be the one that they open up to. They may not have originally opened up to that coach or parent. So you can still save a life by being the person to check in and then getting them to somebody who can really help. Please don't underestimate the power of one caring, one individual, and that can be you.
Please check in with your friends regularly.
If you think they may be struggling, simply ask them.
And if you are struggling, reach out for help.
Or call the National Suicide Hotline by dialing 988.
Remember that we all need help at certain times.
And you are not alone.